Hey everyone, check out my drawing. Do you like it? It's not the most realistic fish you've ever seen, but it clearly is a fish, right? Do you know what you just did is amazing? Your eyes sent signals to your brain, which allowed you to acknowledge you were seeing something, recognize it as a fish, and judge whether you liked it or not, all in a blink of an eye. This is a simplification, but it's the essence of visual processing in your brain. But I think we can all agree very few people would want to frame this drawing. So how could we change this drawing to make you like it more? Well, before you can understand or judge an image, you have to be able to see it. Our perception of an object is our ability to see, hear, or become aware of it through our senses. That awareness influences our understanding, emotional response, and behavior. If we add color, does this make you like it more? Sometimes we have positive feelings when we see color, especially our favorite colors for no particular reason. That is, your perception can directly influence your emotional response, which is a positive or negative feeling brought about by chemicals released in your brain. Human emotions can be very complex, but here we're just talking about a general positive, negative, or neutral feeling. Adding color might also make this image more recognizable as a fish. Features like color, pattern, and background affect not only your perception, but also your cognition, or how well you understand what you're seeing. Cognition involves higher level mental processing like thinking, remembering, and judging. We already know that perception can influence your emotional response, so can cognition. By adding some more details on and around the fish, it becomes even easier to recognize because it looks more like a fish that you might have seen before. In general, the easier it is for our brains to recognize and understand something, the more likely it is we'll have a positive emotional response. Importantly, cognition also means I remember it. For example, maybe you've seen a similar fish in a movie you really like, or during a fun day at the aquarium. These memories create a much more positive response to this picture compared to the initial black and white line drawing. Perception, cognition, and emotional response happen in many animals, not just humans. Can you think of some examples where humans or other animals might perceive something, understand what it is, and have a positive or negative emotional response? I immediately thought of bees. A young bee leaving the hive for the first time is instinctively attracted to colorful objects. Suppose it sees an orange flower. The bee gets a positive emotional response in its brain, which leads it to investigate. When it finds nectar, the bee learns to associate orange flowers with food. Thus, the instinctive positive emotional response to this flower gets strengthened by cognition. That is, specific memory and understanding that the orange flowers have nectar. Just like with bees, our perception means I am aware of this stimulus. Emotion means I have a positive or negative response to it, maybe for no particular reason we can put our finger on. And cognition means I understand this because I have thought about it or have specific memories associated with it. All of these things influence each other and they combine to affect our preferences. That is, do I like or dislike this stimulus? Our preferences can change immediately or over days of careful thought as cognition and emotion interact with each other. Let's look at another example. Suppose blue flowers don't have nectar. A bee may initially have a positive emotional response because it instinctively likes color. But after checking out this blue flower, it finds no nectar, causing the bee to learn that blue flowers don't have food. After that, cognition, or the understanding that the stimulus is a blue flower and that blue flowers don't have food, overrides and changes the emotion to negative. So if the bee has a choice between an orange flower and a blue flower, it perceives both, understands both, and has opposite emotional responses. This is the basis for the bee forming a preference. The bee begins to like the flower that it associates with positive emotions and dislikes the flower it associates with negative emotions. This preference results in a specific behavior, and the bee will now feed exclusively on orange flowers. Sometimes learning is not just about which stimulus is better, but which stimulus is dangerous.
Nope.
In nature, bright yellow and red animals are often poisonous. Suppose a bird tries to eat this bright yellow beetle and immediately gets sick. Even if the bird initially had a positive emotional response to seeing a potential food item, cognition now overrides this. It has learned that yellow beetles make them sick. It may also avoid eating other yellow insects in the future. In contrast, the bird might initially have no emotional response to a purple beetle. After tasting it and finding it acceptable, cognition now creates a positive emotion because it has a specific memory of eating a nutritious purple beetle. The bird now prefers the stimulus it associates with positive emotions and dislikes the stimulus it associates with negative emotions. This preference determines the bird's behavior. It now eats purple beetles and avoids yellow insects in general. The brain is a super complex organ, and what we presented here is a simplification. Neuroscientists are still learning about how perception, cognition, and emotional response help determine preferences and behaviors in human and other animals. Now that you understand how visual signals are processed, let's apply them to ourselves. Can you think of an example of how your perception, cognition, and emotional response affected a decision you made today?